What's up, guys? Hey, some of you might know that my wife, Crystal, owns her own business where she builds custom wood signs for people, and then she ships them all over the country. I think she might have some in other countries. But it happens very rarely. But a few weeks ago, she asked me if I would go to the garage and cut a piece of wood for her. And I was so honored. And being the manly man that I am, I just wanted to get it done quickly. And so I skipped all the safety steps. I did not put these fantastic safety goggles on, or safety glasses, whatever they're called. And I just went straight to cutting wood. And as luck would have it, as I was cutting a piece of wood, this tiny piece shot straight into my eyeball. And my eye immediately started watering. I couldn't see, and I could feel this piece of wood moving around in my eye, but I couldn't get it out. And of course, naturally, I refused to go to the doctor or the hospital. And as a result, that tiny piece of wood scratched and irritated my eye for like 4 days following that. Now, how many of you have ever had something stuck in your eye, or like you got poked in the eye? You know the pain and irritation that I'm talking about. It's uncomfortable. Your eye is constantly tearing up. You can't see anything. Well, today we are closing up our series, Origin Story. It's been all about fighting for justice. Week 1, we unpacked this truth that we can't live out our mission without an understanding that we were created in God's image and embracing how God has wired each of us uniquely. And that our mission is found when we allow Christ to transform us so that we can go and transform others. Last week, we talked about helping others and how that's a commonality that all heroes share. And we got really practical about what that looks like for us. Sometimes providing a physical need like dish soap or laundry detergent, or running a 5K to raise funds to help other churches around the world bring hope and healing to their communities that have been devastated by COVID-19. Or sometimes it's just through a simple smile or asking someone how their day is. When we think about heroes, we often think about saving the world in big ways. But real life heroism is more about what you do in ordinary moments. Heroes are courageous, strong, compassionate, and driven to make wrong things right in the world. But what if we are the ones who cause the hurt or the pain? Sometimes the best way to do that is by owning our mistakes and reconciling with someone that we've hurt, even if we didn't mean to hurt them. And while that may sometimes be the best way, it is also most definitely the road less traveled because it is an extremely difficult thing to do. Now, I could share a bunch of passages of scripture specifically about apologizing or forgiving and reconciling, but instead I want to share a bigger principle about how we're called to treat each other from a passage that you might already be familiar with. And as I do, I want you to think about this. Who do you need to reconcile with, and how this passage relates to that person? In the book of Luke, we read about a time when a lawyer tried to trap Jesus into saying something that would upset the religious authorities of the day, but Jesus wasn't fooled. And here's what we read in Luke chapter 10. It says, "One day an expert in religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question, 'Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?' Jesus replied, 'What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?' And the man answered, 'You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself.' 'Right,' Jesus told him. 'Do this and you will live.' The man wanted to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, 'And who is my neighbor?' Now, it's almost like this lawyer was asking Jesus, how much can I get away with and not get in trouble? What's the bare minimum that I can do to please God? And Jesus flips the question over and says that the way to please God is simple. Love your neighbor as yourself. But loving your neighbor is not simple or easy. And because this man was an expert in Jewish law, Jesus knew that he understood the reference to the Shema. The Shema is an ancient prayer of God's people. This prayer is often repeated throughout the Old Testament, and it's called the Shema, which is the Hebrew word for listen, and it's the first command in the prayer. The second command is the word love. Listen to God and love God. I think it's interesting that the word listen comes first. In order to love God, we must listen to God. Maybe by listening to and loving God, we can learn to listen to and love others as well. Well, this lawyer wasn't totally satisfied with Jesus' answer to love God and his neighbor, so he asked, well, who is my neighbor? And here's where we pick up in verse 30. Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over, looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man, and if his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here." Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. The man replied, "The one who showed him mercy." Then Jesus said, "Yes. Now go and do the same." Now, there's no doubt that the Samaritan man is the hero of this story. He noticed a need, showed compassion, and saved this man's life. But he didn't set out to be a hero. He simply saw a need and met it. Other people saw the same need, but passed by. The Samaritan man saw and then loved. He was heroic in an ordinary moment. Have you ever seen someone in need but ignored them? Or let me ask a more specific question. Have you ever seen someone get hurt by your words or actions, but you ignored the problem? The ministry that Jesus had on this earth is packed full of moments like that of the Samaritan man. Heroes are known for fighting wrongs, but sometimes the hardest wrongs to right are the wrongs that we've caused. Everyone wants to be a hero when they get to do something big and flashy or have a big battle, and everyone notices and applauds. They get all the glory and none of the blame. It's like my kids. But it's also easy to try and be the hero when you're trying to solve someone else's problems. The issue comes when we fail to recognize our own. Now let's go back to the story I shared at the beginning of this message about the piece of wood in my eye. Jesus actually talks about something like this very similar in the book of Matthew, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 3 through 5. He says, "And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, 'Let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye,' when you can't see past the log in your own eye? You hypocrite! First, get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye." I love the sarcasm that I picture Jesus having in this moment. Now remember, it's really hard to see when your vision is impaired, and Jesus is challenging us to address our own issues before we are so willing to point out the wrong in others. It's when we address our own issues and the ways we've contributed to the problem that we can more effectively help right the other wrongs in our world. So who's your neighbor? Your neighbor is the person you can't stand. The person who can't stand you. Your neighbor's the person you're fighting with right now. Your neighbor's the person you haven't talked to in a while because they're still angry or hurt because of what you did or said. When we fight with our neighbors, it's easy to start putting up fences between them and us, like bitterness, anger, silence, guilt, fear, or even revenge. And the more time passes, the bigger the fence between us becomes. The bigger the fence becomes, the more difficult it is to see each other. And if we can't see each other through all of our distance, anger, and bitterness, we will struggle to clearly see the wrongs that need to be made right. So what are the fences separating you and a neighbor? What are the wrongs you need to make right in your relationships? What fences do you need to heroically climb in order to reconcile with someone that you've hurt? How do we do that? How do we reconcile with someone who feels hurt or angry at us? Even if there's hurt or blame on both sides, heroes make the first move toward reconciliation. It's a simple two-step process. Admit how you hurt them, then apologize. Don't make it all about you. Don't be defensive and try to protect your ego. Don't tell them not to be hurt or angry. And side note, you can share if they've hurt you as well, but don't ever use it as an excuse to not take ownership for what you have done. Now this week, let's do something heroic. Let's choose to reconcile with someone we've hurt and right or wrong that we've caused. For you, maybe this looks like, hey man, or girl, I don't know. Hey, I'm really sorry. I said some things that were really hurtful and it was wrong of me to say them. And I'm going to try to be a better friend to you. Can you forgive me for hurting you? Or hey dad, I want to apologize for being disrespectful to you the other day. I know it was hurtful and I'm sorry. I wasn't able to express my feelings better. I'm trying to get better at saying what I need to say in a way that isn't disrespectful because I want you to know I really appreciate you. The apologies don't guarantee healing or reconciliation. Your apology might even get rejected, or your relationship might be beyond repair. But take ownership. Make the first move toward repairing the relationship. I know it's not easy to be the first person to apologize, but that's exactly why we're talking about it. It's not easy, but that's precisely why it is heroic. Now, this is our last week of our series Origin Story. And in the last few weeks, we've talked about a lot of things. Heroes right wrongs. Heroes fight for justice. That's what Jesus came to do, and it's the mission that he's called us to be a part of too. And it's not always flashy or newsworthy, but it is life-changing. One person at a time, one moment at a time, one mission at a time. And it happens when we discover who God made us to be and boldly use our unique gifts for the benefit of others. It happens when we notice the needs of the people right in front of us and get creative on how to meet those needs. It happens in school hallways and in our living rooms when we commit to restoring and healing relationships we have broken. You're not only capable of being a hero, but you're called by God to be one. So how are you going to join Jesus on his mission to save the world? Could today be the start of something new in your faith? Years from now, could you look back and say, today was your origin story? Today was the day that God revealed my purpose and he shifted my perspective. That, Elevate, is my prayer for you.